Do you know where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. You're going to learn about geology. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Crichton maniacs? Mike back again to talk a little more about the man, the prophet, Michael Crichton. Today we're dipping into 1980s Congo, the fifth book published under his own name. Yes, we are just doing books under his own name, no John Lang, none of that stuff here. It is just Mr. Crichton, and we're kind of rolling along here on our great Michael Crichton reread. If you haven't joined us yet, I hope that you will. Easy time to catch up because these first five books really smooth and easy reads, but that's the case with all Michael Crichton, in my opinion. That's what makes him so great. Now, Congo, guys. Congo was one of my favorites as a teenager. So revisiting it now at the prime old age of 42, yes, that is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, I thought, hey, am I still going to feel the same way about it? Well, did it hold up, guys? That is always the question. But before we get into that, let's talk about what is this book about. Deep in the African rainforest near the legendary ruins of the lost city of Zinj, an expedition of 8 American geologists is mysteriously and brutally killed in a matter of minutes. 10,000 miles away, Karen Ross, the Congo project supervisor, watches a gruesome video transmission of the aftermath. A camp destroyed, tents crushed and torn, equipment scattered in the mud alongside dead bodies, all motionless, except for one moving image, a dark, grainy, man-shaped blur. Back in San Francisco, primatologist Peter Elliott works with Amy, a gorilla with an extraordinary vocabulary of 620 signs, the most ever learned by a primate. But recently her behavior has been erratic. Her drawings match with stunning accuracy the brittle pages of a Portuguese print dating back to 1642, a drawing of an ancient lost city. A new expedition, along with Amy, is sent into the Congo, where they enter a secret world and they may run into, well, more than a lost city of gold out there, guys. But that takes us into 1980s Congo and Mr. Crichton really dipping in to the techno thriller. Alright, guys, let's begin like usual with what makes it good or bad. Yes, I just kind of talked into it. This is the first time I felt that Crichton really started to build that image as the master of the techno thriller, the technological thriller. And the reason that he always did this, he always was real good with his science, always real good with his history, always finding a way to fit in stuff that happened in the real world, in real history, wrapping it into an exciting adventure story, but then also having a lot of technical science and things like that in his books. And that was always what made him really special and unique as a writer, because he did all of his homework, he always put the science out there, never made you bored with it, always made it to where you could understand it. And this is the first one where I feel like he does that, but he also makes this really just a thrill ride from beginning to end. I don't think that his first 4 books were necessarily boring. I'm just saying, by comparison, this is the first one that really just feels like it's a mile a minute. It's never a drag, anything at all. Even the science stuff never really bogs you down a little bit, like might have done in Andromeda Strain or Terminal Man, things like that. Might have dragged you down a little bit. With this, it is every bit, you're just flying through the pages with this. And that's something that would kind of become the standard for all Crichton books going forward, starting with this one. I'm glad to see that actually kind of really held true in this reread. But he's ahead of the curve once again, guys, on the science. You know, in each one of these books, he doesn't just repeat the same kind of science over and over again. He's taken a different route. In this one, he's focusing on geology. Obviously, you got your team of geologists. They're looking for these blue diamonds out here in the Congo, you know, this lost city and things like that. So he always finds a way, and I sound like a broken record on this, but guys, it's got to be said every time. What makes Michael Crichton special was he took very heavy science and he broke it down into terms that you, the everyman, if you didn't have a PhD in science, you could understand. He continues to do that here and makes geology very interesting, much more than just digging around in some mud looking for some stones, right? So anytime you can make something like geology seem like super fresh and exciting to me, you obviously knew your stuff. But I say he is ahead of the curve once again on technology. Now look, guys, this book was written in 1980. Things like Skype and Microsoft Teams, that was a pipe dream in 1980. But he's doing these satellite calls and things like that. It might seem dated to you now. In 1980, it was like, whoa, man, this is some futuristic stuff, you know. They're talking from Houston all the way to the Congo, you know, in a single phone call, a video phone call. In 1980, I was like, yeah, I don't know. The technology might have been there, but it was very, very expensive. So a lot of these things I say that I feel like he was ahead of the curve on technology because he nailed a lot of the technology that become like commonplace in today's world. At the time, it might have been really like, wow, you're really, really, I think you might be pipe dreaming a little bit. But he made it to where, you know what, we eventually got there as a people. I always felt like he was about 4 or 5 years ahead on the tech in his books, and we eventually got there. Now, when we talk about Jurassic Park, we'll talk about, you know, the argument there, but we'll get to that. But with this, again, a lot of these things that are in this book, I feel like, hey, we did get there. But it might seem a little dated to you now, obviously, but in 1980, this stuff was very much like, wow, this is really some forward thinking. And again, he continues to hit home runs on that. But I think really with this one, something he struggled with a little bit in his first few books, and this is a knock that he's gotten as an author all the time, is that you could never differentiate his characters. His character work was never that great. This is where I think his character work started to turn around, because Karen and Peter have very, very different personalities. And it was the first time where I felt like, okay, with Karen, you know, she's not necessarily the nicest person. You know, this is the first time I felt like he's wrote a protagonist that really... you might not find yourself rooting for her very much. I think Peter's likable. You know, he's kind of like the everyman in this story. But Karen is very much goal-oriented. Let's put it that way. And it might be the first time, like I said, one of his characters, you might kind of be like, she's not very likable. You know, she's very, very ruthless. She's business first. She's all business over everything else. But yeah, I think with Peter and Amy, that's just adorable. I love that. It's having Amy along is almost like having a talking dog. I think, because just the way that she, not just because she can sign and things like that and communicate with Peter, but just how overprotective she is of Peter. It's adorable. And I dare you, I challenge you not to fall in love with Amy. I mean, it's just, I love anytime she talks in the book. I'm just like, oh, I love it. It's so cute. It's just adorable. And then you got Monroe. Now, Monroe, it's one of his wildest creations yet. I think you start off kind of feeling like you're going to get like a Colonel Kurtz kind of thing, and you end up with more of like a General Zaroff. Google those guys if you don't know what those terms mean, because I don't want to get into all that. But a very, very interesting decision to use the character. You'll see with that. But I think really with this, though, is, yeah, the character work is much, much better, but his villains continue to be really, really good. And in this, yes, the villains, you probably know what they are if you know what Congo's about at all. But I don't want to ruin that for you. Just know that they're very creepy, and they are very competent. I think that they're very competent villains, and it just goes to show that, guys, you don't have to have a villain that can speak to have a really good villain in your story. So hats off to them there. These are all really, really good things, I think. And there are a couple of bad things. I'm not going to kind of glaze over these here. Like I said, the tech, while ahead of its time then, you're going to read it now as like a modern reader, and you're like, this is weird. Why don't they just, why don't they get on their phone and FaceTime each other, So it might be hard if you grew up, at a time where you always had technology. Like if you're in your early 20s or younger, yeah, you grew up with technology in the palm of your hand. Back then it was like, in our wildest dreams, we couldn't have imagined having that kind of technology. I mean, even in 1980, the computer processor that you have in your iPhone right now was the size of a small house. That's just how technology has rapidly advanced during that time. So it might be hard going back and trying to make sense out of that. But again, it's just like any period piece movie you watch. You understand that technology is not going to be where it is today. So I don't consider that a bad thing. But it will seem quite primitive, I think, to modern day readers. Some of the plot holes in the third act are going to leave you scratching your head. I won't lie. There were some things during the assault section here that you're kind of like, but if this is this, then why is... That doesn't make sense. You'll see what I mean if you read it there. But again, I don't feel like it's anything that ruins the story. I think it's quite an explosive third act. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It does have some things that'll have you kind of scratching your head like, am I misunderstanding, or did Crichton miss that there? Because it doesn't seem like there's someone as intelligent as Mr. Crichton missed there. And drop on the Discord if you guys want to know that conversation for sure, because there are some things that people presented that I was like, yeah, I don't really have an answer for you there. Usually I'm like, hey, look, Mr. Crichton's smarter than me. He knew what he was doing, but there's a couple things they brought up. I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not really have an answer for that. And again, the ending is once again a touch anticlimactic. Now, this is, again, guys, That's the common denominator with all Michael Crichton books, is that his endings are brief. They are quick. He is very much a show, don't tell author. When you get to the end, that's it. It's the end. See you later. Thanks for coming. He isn't going to tell you very much about the aftermath. That's just not the style of writer that he was. So if that's something you can't get used to, I don't know if Mr. Crichton might not. He just might not be for you. It's just something he never really did. Here, I've told my story. You kind of piece what happens in the aftermath. You kind of put that together in your own mind. That's the writer that he was. And for me, sometimes it's fine. I feel like sometimes you get these endings where you're like, okay, well, yeah, I had the climax, and then I had 100 pages that just kind of went on and on and on. And I was like, it felt like the author was having a hard time saying goodbye to these characters, kind of thing. That works for some things, like fantasy series. That works because you have a lot of unwinding to do when you have that many characters. Crichton books, you got like 2 to 5 main characters in your cast. You don't need a huge ending like that. But again, I can't say it's a great thing about his books. So I'm going to always put that probably in the bad here. But again, it doesn't bother me, but it might bother you. It's kind of why you should read it, guys. I think Crichton is becoming a better writer with each book here. Every one of these, he has improved from Andromeda Strain to Congo. He's improved every single book and everything. And with a big knock on him, I've had him some of these early books, was his character work was not superb. I think this is where he first started getting good, and we're getting right there, guys, with Sphere and Jurassic Park, where I think his character work is as good as anyone was in fiction during that time. So you can see the steps here. You see how he is improving as a writer as it goes along. Now, he takes a big break between this one and his next one, and there is a noticeable break there, but we'll get to that when we talk about Sphere coming up next month. This feels like the moment where he became a full-time novelist, because he had a lot of balls in the air at the time, a lot of irons in the fire. He was directing movies. He was still basically being a writer on the side. He's very much still writing like papers and things like that. He was still very much committed to what he went to school for. This is the one where it feels like, okay, he's really going all in as a full-time novelist here. And I think it's the fastest pace of his first 5 books. There's never really going to be a dull moment for you. And you've been waiting, for that thrill ride to start, where you've been like, okay, I like the science, but, I feel like it kind of drags down. You want just to be like with the pages. This is where that really, really takes hold. So I would tell a lot of people sometimes when they're new Crichton readers, you want to start somewhere. I think start at Congo and read through, until you get to that point where like, okay, these aren't doing it for me anymore. But starting with Congo, I don't think you're going to have any problems. I love those first 4 books, don't get me wrong. But I think for a new reader, if they want they've read Jurassic Park and they want to read more, I tell them go back and read Congo, go back and read Sphere for sure. And I think that's going to be kind of your sweet spot there. And then all the books he put out in the 90s. So this is the place to start. Now, if I have some final thoughts here, guys, this is every bit as good as it was in my memory, maybe better. I really did enjoy it. Very much science, thrill, adventure, but it also had a little bit like King Solomon's Mines in it. A little bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark almost in there. I really enjoyed the adventure that these just normal people go on. It's definitely not perfect, but you could see that greatness that was on the horizon where Crichton was going to become like a pop culture icon there in the late 80s through the late 90s there. He'd go on to things like Jurassic Park, obviously, which made him like the zeitgeist of the pop culture that still felt kind of today. I mean, they're still putting out Jurassic Park cartoons on Netflix, for God's sake. And, it just what he would do with like ER and things like that. This was kind of the beginning of that. And you could see that greatness was on its way. But I never felt like there was a dull moment in this one. I really never thought it slowed down at all. And this is the book that took me from, I like Michael Crichton to, okay, I am a diehard Michael Crichton fan. No matter what this guy writes, he could write down his drink order on a cocktail napkin. I'm going to read it. That's what it kind of felt like. This is when he entered that realm with Stephen King with me, where no matter what he put out, okay, I'm reading it for sure. And it really is when that time when it started, like when a new Michael Crichton book came out, you just basically cleared your schedule and you took a couple of days and you read it. That's kind of what his books became, like events to me. And it all started when I read this one as a teenager. And guys, I'm really excited because Sphere is the next one up. And in my memory, Sphere is probably my second favorite Michael Crichton book. So I'm anxious to see if it holds up. Now, we're going to talk about the adaptation for this movie. And there is lots to say, guys. Something I do with my Stephen King videos like this is I talk about the multiverse, but Mr. Crichton didn't have a shared universe, so I can't really talk about the connections here. So I decided with him, since he has so many popular adaptations, let's just say big budget adaptations, because most of them didn't land, honestly. I want to talk about the adaptation. So let's talk about the one for Congo. 1995, not only, guys, is this by far, without a doubt, the worst worst Michael Crichton adaptation. It's one of the worst book-to-film adaptations I've ever seen in my life. Maybe Pet Sematary 2019. That might be the only other one that has kind of gotten that vitriolic, just vile reaction from me in the theater where I'm like struggling not to scream out loud. Did you read the fucking book? Like at all. You know, that's kind of where I was when I was in the theater seeing this as a junior in high school. And they fundamentally change every single character in the story except Peter. Peter's about the only one that's pretty close to what he was, and Amy, of course. Those two. Every other character is completely just character assassination. They're not the same character at all. Karen is not the ruthless, shrewd, business-first person that she is in the book. She is very much only on this expedition to find her ex-fiancé and her boss's son. She could care less about the diamonds and all that stuff. I don't know if they thought, hey, we're just going to try to make her a more likable protagonist. I don't know what they were doing there. Honestly, I kind of almost felt like Peter was kind of the main character in the way they did in the movie. Or yeah, I guess it was co-leads. And I mean, I guess the book could feel like that too. You might have mostly gotten it from Karen's point of view. But in the movie, here's what I don't understand. Maybe they were thinking, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. With Tim Curry. Tim Curry, one of my favorite actors of all time. Maybe the best character actor ever. This guy has been money, and no matter what role he has played, makeup or not, he has been incredible up to this point. One of the greatest voices, one of the greatest actors. I love him. He is one of my personal favorites of all time. Even he couldn't save this. I think that since they wanted to make Karen more likable in the film, they decided they needed to have all of her negative parts and then have like an actual villain for the movie. So they took Tim Curry's character, created a completely new character for him, and it was awful. It was just awful. I guess they didn't think that the Grey Gorillas were enough to carry the movie on their own. They needed a voice for that, and they thought that we would all be like, ha 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 ha, when he got his comeuppance at the end. And it was just, the third act, guys, is it's like Sci-Fi Channel, like crazy shark movie bad. It's that awful in the third act. It so goes off the rails. You can't turn away. It's so painful. And it's strange because a lot of the same plot points for the book are in the movie. They're just executed so poorly. And again, and Monroe, I don't even want to talk about what they did Monroe in that. But it's clear that thinking, I said I don't know what they were thinking, but it's clear thinking wasn't in their plans at all. I think that they thought, okay, we need to make this even more over the top action-y than the book was. I don't know because I thought that the book was well paced. It had enough action to keep the reader engaged, and this just seemed like it was just kind of forcing the issue, and it almost kind of just wanted to turn into a sci-fi film, and I don't understand why. Where were these decisions made? So I don't know how much Mr. Crichton was actually involved with this one. I can't imagine it was too much. But yeah, again, one of the worst adaptations ever made. Guys, this is an absolute do not recommend. This is a void at all costs. One of the worst adaptations ever made, and I will stand by that forever. One of the angriest feelings I've ever had in a movie theater. Right here. Yeah, that's about what it is. So guys, have you read Congo? Have you seen the movie? Tell me what you guys think about either of these down below, and I will talk to you there.